Hello everybody, Cone Dodger here, and welcome to Automation, the car company Tycoon game, the Steam Early Access release. If you are already familiar with Automation and my series on the game, then you will be excited to know that the Steam release has a lot of new features in it, and mostly a new layout that makes the game play a lot better than it ever has before. If you are not familiar with Automation, then this is a great place to start to kind of get a feel for what the game is, what it has to offer at this point, and what you can expect in the future, and a basic guide to how to play the game or how to get around the menus and whatnot. In just 1 week's time from the release of this video, it will be 2 years since I started doing videos in Automation, and it has been really fun and exciting to see the game grow and progress in that time. But this is the last really big step for the developers before the game can really start progressing. So this update isn't as big on content and stuff like that, it's big on making it a smooth operating game that can really launch into something larger. So this first option we have on the menu here says in development, and that is the campaign. This is the meat and potatoes of what Automation will eventually be. This is intended to be a full Tycoon experience of building and operating your own car company. This is what we are all working towards and trying to get to. It's not there yet because all of the underpinnings have to be laid out and working completely to get us there. The positive side of that is that we have the scenarios and sandbox elements of the game to experiment with now to kind of see how the campaign is going to play in the future, and in turn, if we are using the scenarios and sandbox on a fairly regular basis, like I have been doing for the last 2 years, we can better help the developers kind of shape how the game is playing, if it's balanced, if it's going to work. And all of that is going to make the campaign play just that much better. You can also see here the multiplayer tab is also in development. That will come sooner rather than later. We already had a multiplayer element in the game previous to this. The multiplayer part is getting a complete revamp basically because of all of the new kind of features to the game that have been added as the game has progressed. There's now a lot more we can do with the multiplayer, including actual like timed races, not the kind of races where you're controlling the car, no, but you will build a car to do a time on the track, and a lot of other holistic car building kind of competitions rather than just building engine competitions like it's been in the past. The next available tab is the scenarios. Now these have not changed dramatically since they were first introduced. They have, however, been rebalanced to better match the new way the game plays. But if you are new to the game, there are tutorials on how to do engines and cars, and it is a good place to start even if you think you know the inner workings of an engine very well. The way they work in-game and the way you should build them in-game isn't necessarily exactly how you would think to do it the first time. You can go in there and just start building stuff willy-nilly, and eventually you'll find your way there, but the tutorials are very helpful in your basics and getting you started. From there you'll have inline 4, V8, and inline 6 engine scenarios to go through, and some general kind of off-the-wall ones in there. And these are a great place to start versus going straight to the cars because the engines take a little bit more time to grow accustomed to building than do the cars. So it's better to go ahead and get used to building engines before you go willy-nilly building cars. That is my advice. And if we go into one of these, you can see it'll give you requirements, and we'll go ahead and play this one. It's going to give you a little bit of story to it and some requirements that you have to stay within, like how many cc's the engine is, what kind of fuel it uses, blah blah blah. And then you'll score points based on how the engine performed to try and get bronze, silver, gold, platinum, etc. And that is pretty much how those play out. We will take a look at what it's like to build an engine, but we're going to do that in sandbox mode because I have already done all of these scenarios previously and in some of the previous videos. Actually, let me go back to the scenarios and show you that the car scenarios, there is this many of those, and these are good at kind of showing you what it's going to be like to build cars in the campaign. It's a little bit more restricted than you'll probably experience in the campaign play, but it gives you a good preview of how detailed you can be and just how different you can make a car even with some restrictions on you. Alrighty, let's go down to the final option now, and that is the Sandbox mode. Now this mode is something I've spent most of my time in the past 2 years of doing automation LPs, and that is partially due to the fact I really enjoy doing fantasy kind of car company builds, emulating a little bit like a campaign, but more of like a competition made for myself, and sometimes the viewers. But today we're just going to build something outside the realm of the Vector Automotive Challenge, just to show how the new flow for the car designer and engine designers work, and how much better they are, basically. So here we can see at the top, we can choose the year. Let's actually go down here. We can go back a few decades, in fact. I'm going to go to 1995, and we can choose to name a new model. So we're going to call this the steam truck. So now if we go down here, we can deselect some things, namely everything besides the truck. And it will show us, well, this one, and apparently this one is a truck. It's still in works, guys, still being tweaked on. We can choose the truck, we can choose the Suburban style, we can choose the truck style. I want to do the pickup truck style. And let's see, now what we can do is actually tweak on this body. This is a pickup truck, so I imagine there's not a ton we can do with this. I would like to maybe try and lean back that windshield. Can we change the size of the cab? We cannot, but we can change the size of the bed. Oh yeah, big long bed. So because this is a pickup truck, there's not a ton we can do with it. But every car has a certain amount of things you can do with it. So I'm going to give it just a little bit of fender, because I do want to put some wheels and tires under this thing. I'm going to try to make this thing a little bit of a sports truck. Alrighty, moving on. We will now choose our chassis type, and it will unlock the next category, which is how the new flow works. And we can say that we want it to be corrosion-resistant steel on the chassis. We don't want it to be transverse. A front-wheel drive-based truck would be a little strange. So we'll go with front longitudinal. Up front, we will see which one of these gives us more off-road abilities. Definitely the McPherson Strut. It is 1995, so that is all we have to offer. And I think that is probably the middle-of-the-road option. Good way to go. Now, single axle coil in the back will give us lots of off-road and lots of load capacity. A Leaf would do the same, but it kind of hurts in that sportiness and tameness, and I would like it to be a little bit of a sports truck, so we'll go with single axle coil. And the panel material, we'll choose corrosion-resistant steel there as well. Now we can move on to putting fixtures on the truck, and this works similarly to how it has always worked, but if you aren't familiar with it, you'll go through the different categories and choose some headlights, and then you'll place those headlights on the vehicle. And then you don't have to just deal with that tiny little headlight. You can actually change the size of it. You can make it a different shape completely. You could rectangle it out. You can do all sorts of things, even rotate them if you so desired. You can even go for something like that and be completely crazy. But let's actually bring them back to where they usually are. And I will go ahead and work through designing out this truck. Alrighty, so here is our truck body with its fixtures, and here's another new feature. You can snap the camera to the front, to a side profile, and then kind of a rear profile, and a little bit of a 3/4 view. And that is very handy, and you can see it will rotate front to back and give you all sorts of different 3/4 views. Very nice feature, no more having to fumble around trying to find just the right position for your screenshots and whatnot. That's a handy little feature there. And then if we move on, we will see the next handy little feature, and that is a color wheel where we can choose our own color. But first, we can see that we have a new tab unlocked up top here, and that is giving us the trim of this vehicle. So we're going to call this truck that we're building basically the sporty trim model. We'll say it is the Thunder model? Where could I get that name from? I don't know. And then choose our color as we wish, no more being limited to just a handful of colors. And you can actually go right here and change just how shiny it is. If it's matte, I like it to be really, really shiny. And then you can change the color to like a darker red if you wanted a darker red. Maybe with a little bit of gray in it. That's a weird color. I think we'll go for something like this. I'm going to choose rear wheel drive. And then we will make a new engine. So this works with a similar flow technique. So we can choose V8. We can choose to have let's do an aluminum block on this guy. And then we have a family capacity. That's right, we have another new tab open here. This is the engine family. So we're going to call this the truck V8 family, not the asterisk, but V8 family of engines. And we're going to choose the maximum size of this engine family. So we'll say at maximum, this thing will have a 6.5 liter capacity. That's important to remember because that comes into play later on, and I'll show you. So on the heads and valves, we now have a new option there, Modern OHV, and that is bringing pushrod technology up to modern terms, because you can do amazing things with OHV anymore, much more so than the original pushrod design. So that's a nice addition there. We'll choose aluminum heads to go with our aluminum block, and we will not choose EVL because it is not available. So now, when we move on to the full bottom end, you'll see here the typical options. We're going to go for some middle of the road stuff, and you'll see the tooltips up there to tell you just why you would want to choose this. I'm choosing forged steel for the torque capacity, forged H-beam for the torque capacity, and I'm going to go for, let's see, I'm going to go for forged pistons because once again I want that torque capacity. And now you will see the engine running in very slow motion, so you can see how everything works. Pretty cool looking thing. This is, if you're not familiar with the game, trust me, this was basically all there was to the game when I first got into it. And just watching this was enough to get me interested, so it's still really cool. But now you can see the variant is available, the variant capacity, and that is because from here you can make different variants of this family of engine. But like I said, this is the maximum capacity. You can de-stroke it, you can de-bore it, but you cannot make it any bigger. So I will name this variant, and we will move on. I'm going to leave it at its max capacity. Compression-wise, we will kind of go for the high side. These values are going to be pretty simple for now. We will tune them later with the new tuning techniques, which are significantly improved. We'll put some valve covers on the thing. There we go, that looks good. And we're going to keep it NA. And then we're going to do injection. We have multi-point available. I'm going to go for a twin throttle bodied setup. We'll do performance intakes. We will run it on super unleaded. And we'll put the fuel mix up somewhere in the safe range. It's same for ignition timing. So when you see this and you see the cam profile, a lot of people think it would be better if it was more specific, like I want to run 243 cams on the intake side and a 245 on the exhaust side. That stuff sounds really cool in theory, but is extremely hard to tune and makes the game much more difficult and grindy than it needs to be. You can accomplish everything you need to accomplish with just the cam profile slider, and the same for the ignition timing slider. It works very well for what we need and the purposes of this. 6,000 RPMs where I'm going to put it. We'll see if it'll survive that or not. I'm going to put some tubular headers on this thing with a dual exhaust. For aiming, I would like to get near 500 horsepower, so with the twin 2.5-inch exhaust pipes, we can make 521 horsepower. Do some cats, just straight through mufflers. Keep this thing nice and loud. Alright, now we can do our first dyno test. So it's going to run the engine through its dyno test as normal. And we can see that it made 467 horsepower and 447 foot-pounds of torque. So I got pretty darn close to the numbers I was hoping for. And we can see this new menu over here, which used to be part of test mode, but is now everywhere, and is extremely useful. So, we are having MTBF issues, and it is a rev limit issue on the cotton rods and the pistons. So we can go to here into the fuel management system and say, reduce the RPM limit. But we don't have to test it again. It is adjusting it on the fly. And we are seeing that now it is improved. It's only just barely starting to get into those issues. And we're not really reducing the power output of this thing. Well, we are kind of, yeah, because we were making such extreme power up top. So rather than limiting the RPM limit, that sounds a little weird, but just roll with it, we can say increase the quality of the bottom end parts. We can see about maybe going for something that has a higher RPM limit. You can see that it's going to compare it now to what we have selected, so that will give us a higher RPM limit, and there you go. Now it's much happier, and we're not having any MTBF issues, and we can retain our high RPM limit. We could maybe even increase it, indeed, up to 6,000 RPM. Good news. Helps all around. Okay, so let's go back. We are needing 89.9 fuel octane. We have 93.1 to choose from. So let's try and give it more timing. You can see on the left, it's going to show us what that's adjusting directly over here, including the new performance index, which shows you how the engine performs through its entire power band and how much usable power it has past its peak power, as well as things like economy. Showing that we are increasing its responsiveness by increasing the timing, and we can see on the dyno chart what it's doing to that, which does good up to a certain point. So we'll keep that as is. And if we go to the top end, you can see that fuel octane is still 90.6. We can start increasing the compression till, oh, there you go, there's your knock. So don't do that anymore. Okay, so now this engine is pretty much tuned out, but I can try to increase the fuel mix. Okay, it's not running rich yet, and that bought us some more fuel octane, so we could potentially maybe get another click out of compression. There you go, 489 horsepower. That's a pretty stout number. So there we have it. There is our engine. It has a 16.37% economy rating, which is not great. If you don't know, that is not a great economy rating, but this is not an economy vehicle. Alright, there's our Thunder Special Truck V8. Now we move on to trimming the vehicle out. We're going to give it a manual gearbox with a with a single standard clutch, and we'll do a 6-speed under there. And you'll see this optimal power versus the speed and gearing chart come up. This is a new thing, and this again adjusts on the fly. Due to aerodynamic reasons, we have a top speed of 133 miles per hour estimated. So we will kind of leave that as is. Now let's see about, I want to increase the sportiness of this truck quite a bit. So I want it to have quite a bit of overdrive, and I want it to have quite a bit of spacing to try and get second gear to reach 60 miles per hour. May have to tweak that in the future, we'll see. Then in the back, we now have differentials to choose from. We never did before. You could do manual locking for this truck. This one's not really off-road special, it's more of the going fast special. The manual locker, again, not really what we're looking for. Now we could choose viscous LSD, geared LSD, or electric LSD. I think geared LSD is our best choice because it has high tameness, high sportiness, and an average comfort. Off-road is low, but like I said, this is not about going off-road. Moving on to tires, I'm going to go for some sports compounds, which you can see put some really small tires on there. We can increase that, put some 16s on there, but I want to have really big tires as well, because it's 90s and it's a truck. But we can increase the width up to maybe some 235s in the front, some 245s in the back, and we can offset them. Just try and give it that little bit of a flush look. We can choose between steel and alloy here in 95, there is more options. And we can now, for the first time, choose our wheel style. There will probably be more of these in the future, but for now, these are the selection we have. I think those are probably the natural fit for this thing. Alrighty, moving on to brakes. We can choose now drum brakes, or solid disc, or vented disc. I'm going to go for vented ones in the front. This thing's pretty heavy, so I'm going to put some 3-piston calipers up front, try and get it slowed down, with some rather large brake discs, because it's, like I said, a lot of power, a lot of weight. Then the back, we will go for just some solid discs, with some 2 pistons, and keep them a little bit smaller, because there's no weight in the back of this thing. Alrighty, moving on, we go to the aero section. We don't need a whole lot of cladding because I don't think downforce is going to be an issue. Top speed is really not that high. This is more about straight line performance. Cooling airflow, we don't need too much. We only need 207 kilojoules per second. We have about 1,000 to choose from with that huge grill. So let's just bring that down to about 269. I'm going to give it a little bit of brake airflow too, which you see will reduce the engine cooling airflow. But a little bit of brake airflow to try and cool those front brakes, and because this is a sports truck. Alrighty, for the inside, we will put some bucket seats in there, so 2 seats, and we'll give it a sporty interior. And now under entertainment, we have some better options that actually make some sense. So there's none. Basic cassette, standard cassette, premium CD, luxury CD. So like a 6 CD changer. Oh yeah, let's go for that. We can choose power steering, ABS, we'll leave off the other 2. And then for safety, which is over here, you gotta read a little sideways there. Safety, it will be basic, standard, or advanced 90s, or basic 80s, standard 90s, advanced 90s. We'll go for standard 90s. We'll at least give the driver an airbag. How about that? I'm such a caring car builder. Alrighty, and then the next one is the suspension. There's some new stuff here as well. On springs, you can do standard, progressive, or hydro-pneumatic. Yeah, I don't think we're going for that just yet, but we'll put some progressive springs on it. That'll be nice. Then you have twin tubes, gas monotube, and adaptive. We'll go for the gas monotubes with just regular passive sway bars, and we'll put a sport setup on there. Okay, now assuming we have selected everything, we can go to the next tab, and it will give us some stats. No more having to hit test or anything like that, it just automatically gives you your stats. You can see we had 489 horsepower, 6 gears, and now we have some values here. A tameness of 33.6, a sportiness of 30, a comfort of 28, and a prestige of 41.2, and a safety of 55. That's pretty impressive. It weighs 3,820 pounds. That's actually not as much as I expected. And gets 13.2 miles per gallon. Oh yeah. Total cost is now a thing. It is $13,589 in 1995 monies. Now that is the total cost to produce this vehicle. That's not an MSRP or anything like that. That's just how much it costs to make. The other options we have are to look at the test track and the detailed stats. And in here you can see what it is that is causing this score to be what it is. Now we can look through here and see that understeer oversteer is giving this thing a huge tameness a negative attribute, as is the suspension options. Probably due to the kind of antiquated suspension it has under it, not the coil spring in the back. But this thing still needs to be able to haul a trailer and stuff like that. Okay, so why is it that it has such a weird understeer oversteer rating? My guess is it's probably an oversteering mess. It probably also has, if we go under sportiness, where is it? Yeah, it has the same drawbacks under sportiness. Chassis stiffness is very low because we went the unibody setup, which is bizarre for a truck. But now what we can do is actually go back and choose, say we wanted to look at what it would be like with a ladder chassis instead of the monocoque. We can look and see that stiffness actually will not improve with the ladder frame. It will just make it, let's see, it's really just going to reduce our cost, which isn't really anything we want to do or worried about at the moment. So go back to the trim, it's going to build the truck again, and now we can actually look into why this thing is such an oversteering mess. So let's go to the suspension tab, and here you go. Actually, to my surprise, it is an understeering mess. That low weight in the back isn't necessarily causing a lot of problems. So this is basically how the vehicle takes bumps, which looks okay, so I'm not worried about that right now. Its sportiness and tameness here isn't bad, but can we tune out some of that understeer? If we go to the tire menu here, you will see the same thing. And just to show you what would it look like if it was oversteery, that's what it would look like. It would go way up to the top. Oversteer's bad. You don't want a vehicle that oversteers. Sure, it gives you sportiness, but look what it did to tameness. And that is because, well, it'll kill you. So if we go back down, oops, if we go back down here and go for 245s in the back, you'll see our tameness come right back up, the sportiness go back down. And let's see, that is with the most tire we can get in the front. We do need that stagger. We could try to tune the suspension just a little bit to try and maybe get it closer. Yeah, so now it flipped over. It actually wants to be more understeery to get tameness. So there you go, we've gotten it to be a little bit more tame, but not any more sporty. And I think for the sake of this vehicle, there's not a whole lot we can do with that. But that just shows you that you can adjust the stuff on the fly now, and that is really, really cool. You could see here that if we went down to, say, medium compounds, we would gain basically nothing besides cutting the material costs. So the sport compounds do help in only the sportiness, but it is a sports truck, so we do want that. Alright, there we go. That is a start to finish build of a vehicle in the Steam release version of Automation. I hope to help you out if you are new to the game, and if you are an existing Automation fan, I hope you're excited as much as I am about the new features and how awesome they are and how much easier it is to build and tune your vehicles. But just one last thing before we end this episode, I do want to show you that under the trim tab, this is something that I kind of missed, but the developers kind of pointed out to me. This button right here is clone. So, say we wanted to make a off-road version of this truck, I can click that and it's going to copy everything. It's going to copy this entire truck. Then I could choose that one, call it the off-road. So now we could adjust it in some ways to make it more of an off-road vehicle. You can't go any further back than this. All of those options are locked in. But you could change it to all-wheel drive. You could change the engine. Remember how I said you could change the engine family and such? You could still do a completely different family of engines in this vehicle. You could go into trim and change this completely. You could go for, say, the chunky off-road tires and stuff like that, and make this more of an off-road vehicle and have it as a different trim model. So that too is a really cool feature and something that will make doing our virtual car company even that much easier, and I really look forward to continuing the Vector Automotive Challenge. But that is going to do it for this episode. If you're new to Automation, I hope you're excited and I hope you check it out. And if you're an existing fan, I hope you are excited to see how the changes to the game are going to affect how Vector Automotive proceeds in the future. But thanks as always for watching, and I will see you soon.